pensez d'être comme ça en retard, de devoir se dépêcher, de marcher 25 minutes pour aller à une gare, on sait même pas où elle est?
Moi je dis il y a un pattern, tu vois.
Il y a un pattern mort d'une diplomatie en fait.
Bon, exactement, non mais surtout parce qu'en gros en Slovénie on a eu le même problème.
Ouais.
Donc fatalement...
Fatalement, en fait, c'est juste un pattern de LouvainMUN.
Exactement.
Bonsoir. Nous venons monter capitale du style et de la bonne humeur. Ça depuis que Joachim et moi sommes arrivés.
Nous arrivons. Vous le savez, vous nous attendez. Vous êtes nombreux. Nous vous saluons.
Montrez tout le public venu pour voir
Mais
John.
c'est un one-man show en fait.
Loc Maria, ici tous les fans de John sont ici sur la...
Oh merde.
On aurait... John,
Badant.
qu'est-il? John est également appelé le roi de l'impro, comme vous pouvez le voir à la caméra en ce moment même. Il aurait également battu le record fédéral d'apnée.
Là, on vient de se réveiller avec John. On s'est couché hier soir après le resto. Et du coup, là, on va partir doucement en bas pour préparer un peu la conférence. Rien qu'avec ceux du Security Council. Et donc, je pense que ça va être vraiment cool. Comme ça, on pourra être bien prêt pour la conférence et on pourra attaquer directement.
C'est un gigote Théma, le ton à Waterloo.
Ouais, il paraît que c'est horrible.
Film de l'enfant à Waterloo qu'on a observé en Belgique.
Content d'être là. Montre-nous ta trouvaille, Aurian. Big pizza. John, comment tu te sens pour cette cérémonie?
Bah écoute, je sens que ça va être très intéressant. C'est aussi un bon moyen de prendre le temps de travailler.
Terribly real, and it's been studied as a case study. In fact, about things, and you will see references to things happening these days, not only in Ukraine, but perhaps in other places as well. So, ready, fly with me, okay? Fly back. And fly to a place which is not.
So then it was really the beginning of the end of the hopes in the Arab world because Sisi was supported by the Western world. So the expectation of the Arab Spring was a little bit slowed down at that time.
Honorable Chair, distinguished delegates, 21,000. 21,000, it is the average number of deaths these last decades by terrorist acts. That's enormous. Terrorism is still one of the main challenges of our period, of our decades, and we think that we really must act right now internationally, continue to act in collaboration and in living together situation. The Republic of Italy has always been active in the fight against terrorism since the 2001 attacks, and we plan to continue on that. We think that the most important points that we really need to address are first the definition in itself of terrorism as mentioned by India, because it was proposed in the Comprehensive Convention against Terrorism proposed by India for a long time. It was denied because of this definition, so we must work on this. Secondly, we must work on the financing of terrorism. Then thirdly, the acquisition of weapons, which is a really important point. And last but not least, the impact of the last development in Afghanistan and its direct impact on human rights, for example. Thank you very much. We yield our time for questions, of course.
We need to work on a definition of terrorism. It would like if you could elaborate further on why you believe the 19 legal instruments the United Nations has already passed on definitions of terrorism and terrorist acts are not sufficient.
Yeah. Basically, first you had the first try to have a definition that was not legally binding. Then we had, as mentioned by India, the 2004 1566 resolution that stated a legally binding definition of terrorism that's stated by India. And we think that, for example, for this treaty about comprehensive convention on against terrorism, we think that the problem of this definition is that it is not really recognized by each country in practice, and we think that we must work to at least propose something to work on that, and that this treaty must be pushed no matter of this problem of definition.
In the delegate speech, the discussion of combating financing of terrorism was brought up. What actions would the delegation of Italy take against state actors and states who are accused of financing terrorists?
Yeah. Thank you very much for an interesting question. We think that first there are already mechanisms existing, for example the theft that is working on this matter, and it's really important to reinforce this kind of mechanism, international mechanism, in order to work together for this type of international mechanism and to enhance the collaboration. And we have a plan on this, and we will really be pleased to propose it to you in a moderated caucus on this subject.
Democratic institutions, and thirdly, a respect for the rule of law that we all cherish. Then, to end the speech, the mission Pakistan carries for this committee is to switch the focus of international counterterrorism from a more defensive approach, causing repression in the targeted regions, to a more preventive approach built on fitting educational programs for youth in these uncivil areas. Thank you, and we are open to points of information.
Prosperity. Terrorism is a threat to global security and global prosperity. It provokes and uses humanitarian crisis for its own benefit, taking advantage of weak people. Today, it takes different forms and touches all countries on earth. Therefore, the state of Qatar confirmed, indeed, in various occasions, its condemnation and strong.
Ukraine is steadfastly attached to the principles of the United Nations and the Conventions Against Terrorism. Also, Ukraine is aware of the subject's complexity, and we want to discuss with all of you 3 solutions we want to stress about. First, to effectively tackle terrorism funding with the enhancing of existing legal framework. Second, the exploitation of weapons to terrorists with more transparency. And finally, to raise awareness about the threat that terrorism
rentré là à l'instant du premier comité. On a eu l'opening ceremony, puis directement on a enchaîné sur le premier comité. Bon, c'était pas exactement comme on s'attendait, mais voilà, c'était quand même chouette. On a rencontré plein de monde. Donc là, on a pris une petite douche et on va bientôt partir pour le casino de Beaulieu. Donc on a des bus organisés par Medmun. Ça va être vraiment cool. On va pouvoir directement partir en bus et profiter de la soirée. Je pense pas que j'aurai l'occasion de filmer, mais de toute façon, vous aurez des images de ce qui se passera demain. De ta tenue. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez? Est-ce que vous pensez qu'il passe, il rentre au Shabiba? Ah, peut-être pas pieds nus, hein. Ça va pas passer, hein, John.
Écoute, tu laisses pas le temps de me
Ready for the second bad day.
Not ready.
Caucus on the terrorism internationally or locally. We think that as it is stated in our on the working draft resolution, we must act regionally and internationally. Basically, terrorism is already international. Of course, you can act on a local basis, but first there is the problem of the needs. Every country has not the middle necessary to fight, and again, it is already an international problem. Like for example, some terrorists are promoting their action and going in Europe, taking some young students, and they are coming working for them. So we have to act internationally, and this is really important that you, after it will be ratified, read our draft and see our point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate.
Qu'est-ce qui va aujourd'hui? Dis-moi tout, John.
Écoute, le mood est bon.
Le mood est bon?
Non, en fait, non.
Est-ce que tu penses que notre résolution va passer?
Ah, clairement. On va avoir les vétos derrière.
Ce sera rajouté. Ce sera rajouté au montage, t'inquiète pas. Du coup, là, on est parti pour le jour...
Jour 3.
Jour 3. Bonjour. Mais c'est Amina. Ouh, montre-nous ce que t'as trouvé. Aïe, 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 aïe. Thank you. We would like to take this occasion to ask question.
when did we negotiate, take a moderated caucus, at least discuss these matters? When we discussed small arms, when we discussed stockpile, when we discussed these matters, we think that the resolution that we are voting in this committee should represent what we discussed, what we actually made, and not a simple resolution that were written like this, with no sense, randomly. So, here again, we think that these two clauses must be down and must be voted against. Thank you very much.
All those delegates wishing to vote in favor of this resolution, please put your placards up now.
All delegations wishing to vote against this resolution as a whole, please put your placards up. All delegations wishing to abstain, please put your placards up. This resolution has been successfully adopted.
Adjourn this committee session. No. Yes, Delegate Al-Hamson.
Motion to adjourn.
That is okay, moving on.
Which, let me remind you, is your conference. After 3 days of debating, networking, and
Aurian became known to all as Mossad. Was just one thin wall away from the house where a senior ISIS fighter lived, despite the great danger of doing so. Writing history under such